Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our daily Clues by Sam. I hope you guys are doing good. I'm doing better each day, a little better. And I'm a little shocked to see that today we have a tricky one on a Friday. It's always a little bit of a surprise what comes in a Friday, if it's a tricky one or a hard one. But it's always fun as well. So if you want to play along, the link is in the description. If you don't know what this is, it's a puzzle that changes in difficulty along the week. And in it, there are 20 people who are either criminals or innocents. And we are going to figure out what they are together using the clues that they might give us. So let's start right now with Abiba, telling us that both innocents in row 2 are connected. So Abiba is one of the innocents in row 2, which means that one of the people connected to them have to be the other innocent, and Lucy, who is not connected to them, is a criminal. Lucy now says that both criminals in row 2 are connected. So, same thing as the innocents, but now talking about criminals, since Lucy is a criminal in row 2, John has to be the second one, which makes Graham the second innocent, and we don't need neither of these clues. Now Graham says that only one of the 3 criminals in row 1 is Eric's neighbor. So, if Eric is in row 1 and he has 2 people neighboring him in that same row, but only one of those 2 is a criminal, and we need 3 criminals total in that same row, that means that Eric and Bonnie have to be both criminals, because only one innocent is in the entire row and that innocent neighbors him. Now we don't need Graham's clue because we tagged Chuck and Flora here. And Bonnie says that exactly 3 of the 4 criminals neighboring John are on the edges. So John has 5 people neighboring him on the edges. 3 of those are criminals. One of them is Eric, the second one is Lucy, and the third and last one is either going to be Chuck or Flora, so that makes Kita an innocent. And now we also know that either Oscar or Peter have to be the 4th criminal for John, right? Since we tagged them, we dismiss Bonnie's clue. And look at Kita saying that Habiba and John have only one innocent neighbor in common. And Habiba and John have 4 neighbors total in common. And 2 of those are Oscar and Peter, who are opposites. So that means that there's already an innocent here. So nobody else is an innocent. That makes Chuck a criminal, and Chuck was opposites with Flora. Now, Flora says that only one of the 4 criminals neighboring Stella is in row 3. So Stella also neighbors Oscar and Peter, who have a criminal among them. If only one of those is a criminal and both of those are in row 3, that makes the 3rd person to neighbor Stella in row 3 not a criminal. And Stella has to have 3 more criminals down here in rows 4 and 5. Now, so we leave that clue there and look at Michael's. Michael says that Wanda is one of 8 criminals on the edges. So Wanda is a criminal. There's 8 criminals total on the edges. So there's 14 people on the edges. 8 of them are criminals, which makes 6 of them innocents, right? 4 of which we already know about. We know about Graham, Michael, Flora, and Kita, who are on the edges and are innocent, so 2 more innocents on the edges. Wanda now says that Zabi is one of Uma's 3 innocent neighbors, so Zabi is our 5th innocent on the edge, and Uma has 3 innocent neighbors total. So far we know about 2 of them. So the 3rd and last one could be anybody here. It could be somebody that is not on the edge. But the thing is, Stella still needs 2 more criminals, right? Because she has Wanda and she's gonna have a second one here in row 3. To total 4, she needs 2 more. Could both of those be Ronald and Vince? If that were the case, nobody else than neighbor Stella, and it's not Oscar or Peter, will be a criminal. So that will make Harry an innocent. Which works. if both Zoe and Peter are criminals neighboring Uma. But that will make Uma an innocent, so we can have 6 innocents on the edges, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If, on the other hand, Stella had... Well, we couldn't have both Ronald and Vince be innocents, right? Because that would end all the innocents on the edges. And that would force Oscar and Peter to be both criminals, so Stella can have 4 criminals. So we know that Ronald and Vince couldn't both be innocents. Which makes Uma and Zoe opposites. That's an interesting point of view. Does it make them opposites though? Can them both be innocents? If both of them are innocents, both Terry and Peter are innocents, and then either Ronald or Vince would have to be an innocent because Stella has 3 criminals now. So only one more to make 4. So no, both Uma and Zoe can't be innocents. So that's a good way to prove that. And since they are opposites, we now know that Ronald and Vince are for sure opposites as well. Only one of them can be an innocent. And that's Stella's 4 criminals. One of them here in row 3, one of them here in column A, one of them is Wanda, and the 4th one has to be Terry. What? Oh, it's always so funny when I'm so sure of something. And then I get it wrong. Because could both Uma and Zoe... I just said that it couldn't be both Ronald and Vince are innocents. So, which would make Uma and Zoe both criminals, right? But that would force everybody here to be a criminal to neighbor Stella. So no, they can't both be innocents. And if both of them are criminals, that forces... What did I try there? Terry is a criminal, yeah. That forces... If both of them are criminals, that forces Uma and Zoe to be both... Oh no. We have 5 innocents already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can't have 2 anyway. We can't have 2 anyway. And if we can't have 2... when did I count that wrong? If we can't have 2 anyway, and both of these guys are criminals, one of either Uma or Zoe will be an innocent. But if anybody here is an innocent, that works as well. What couldn't happen is Uma being an innocent, because Uma being an innocent makes these guys criminals. Well, that works. Why couldn't Uma be an innocent? This works. Because you know that Uma has 3 innocents, right? That's what Wanda says. Now, so Uma could be a criminal. If we made Zoe an innocent, that would force both of these guys to be criminals, because Uma has her 3 innocents, and both of these guys to be criminals, so it's not Uma, it's Zoe. It frustrates me to no end when I count stuff wrong. And it frustrates me because I'm being an example to you guys, so I'm sort of being a bad example of how to play. So I don't like that. But I'm never recording again. I'm gonna leave my mistakes here for posterity. Okay, so Zoe being an innocent forces Stella to have way too many criminals. So Zoe has to be a criminal. That's okay. Now Zoe says that Michael and Stella have only one innocent neighbor in common. So Michael and Stella have two people in common, Ronald and Oscar. Only one of them is gonna be an innocent. So that makes Stella's second criminal neighbor be either Ronald or Oscar. But the thing is, if Oscar, first of all, if Oscar is an innocent, he would make both Peter and Ronald criminals. And that would force Harry to be an innocent because of Uma, which would then make Vince a criminal. So Stella can have 4 criminals. That's okay by me. Uma would then have to be an innocent, so we can have 6 innocents on the edges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not me not trusting myself. If Oscar is a criminal, though, he makes Peter and Ronald both innocents. And Harry and Vince criminals. And that's 4 for Stella. Which would make Uma a criminal as well, because our last innocent on the edge now is Ronald. So what do we know? What have we learned from that? Is it that Vince is always a criminal? Can I make Vince an innocent? And if I do, I would have to make Oscar an innocent, so that Ronald and Peter are both criminals. And that would force Harry to be a criminal as well, so that Stella can have 4 criminals. But now Uma doesn't have 3 innocents. So Vince has to be a criminal. Vince now says there are 12 criminals total on the whole board. So that's 8 criminals on the edges. We need 4 more on the heart of the board. 4 more makes John one of them, and we need another 3. One of which is either Oscar or Peter, so we know that both Stella and Terry have to be criminals. That sounds okay by me. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's enough for me to be sure. But now I'm not confident that my logic is sound. But it was. That's fine. Uma still needs one innocent, that has to be Peter now, which makes Oscar a criminal, and that makes Ronald an innocent. Our last innocent on the edge is now Ronald, so that makes Uma a criminal. Okay. Ugh. I'm so frustrated with these last puzzles where I get a yellow one in each one. Where's my reputation going? I'm always having fun, guys. I'm just trying to help you. And if it does help you that I do get it wrong and then I recover from my wrongness by looking back at it. Nowadays, I'm not as confident, but I think it's important to have these skills as well, like the skill of going back and looking at where your logic. I've mentioned this in the past, so I'm not deviating as much from my past self. It's always a learning opportunity, and I've also mentioned that your circumstances, your day to day, how your life is going, of course, that is gonna have an impact on how you perform in so many aspects of your life, not only in puzzling. So, give or take, it's also a good example of how to keep going. And I know you guys can see that as well, some of you. So, thank you for the support. Thank you for sharing how your puzzles go with me as well. I like it. I'll leave you guys here for now and see you in my next video. So, bye bye.